time period is extremely key for scrutiny. Overall, it has to stand out and it has to have clear elements of continuity throughout. What I have for you here is a clip from the Avengers 1960.
It can drill holes in diamonds and goes through steel plate like butter. But as for living tissue, we should just have to experiment.
So I actually came across this clip from my dad. He used to watch the Avengers in the 60s. And I feel that the environment just gave me such a great sense of the period of itself, even down to the colouring of the wood, and the costume, which is highly important to make sure that the set is therefore relevant to the character himself. Now, the next clip I'm going to show you is one that I found and I absolutely fell in love with. It inspired me to look in depth with the set design and how the lab itself would look, the different layers of equipment and exposed piping, and having all these different features which are just so key to make it look like a working environment for the character. One of the websites that I looked into that was really helpful was one that looks at British and American history in terms of the technology and radio and all that sorts of stuff. I looked at the early 60s material and it came up with images and articles on this technology that was used at this time. By looking at these documents, it gave me such a sense of the period and how we could either make or source this equipment. Even if it wasn't technically correct, it would still give the appeal of being scientific and technical. This layout and exposed wiring was something that I wanted to look at closer and start designing towards. The colour palette was not just an area that was key, but it was also essential to communicate the time period as well. As these two areas go hand in hand, they also have to express the theme of German Expressionism. The colour palette would have to extend these darker tones, which we find to be present in these examples. It would allow different features of lighting to later add shadow and tone to the set and therefore the storyline. Whilst in Berlin, our director came across some examples of German Expressionism art. We have the darker tones, the blues, the greens, and that hint of yellow, which gives that bleak and cold colour with hints of blotchiness in this artwork. When discussing the colour palette, both Imogen and I felt that it was crucial to have the colours communicate a certain emotion and feeling. This is why we resulted in looking at the metal colours of the equipment that I was sourcing, which was quite typical of having quite a dark cyan colour, and we felt that this just fit perfect with the set and therefore the technology to go alongside it. Once we had a number of colours in mind, we started to put them into groups and we started to think about what sort of colours we'd see for props such as bottles and what we'd see for the technical elements. These range of colours would therefore go against the darker cyan colour, which would then be painted on the walls of the lab. It's highly important to consider how the set will be lit, as this ultimately affects the colour palette and everything that is put into the set itself. An example which I found, which was similar to the set that we were designing around, was one from Peaky Blinders, and I find that the way that the lighting bounces off the interior, which has a specific colour palette similar to the one that we are thinking of, which just highlights this gloomy and dark atmosphere. In order to experiment with the lighting and to see how this would affect the colour within the set, I built a set model and I started to look at different colours and how they would react with the dark cyan colour. As you can see here, with the red, it presents this sort of almost purpley green, and with the use of the green gel it perhaps highlights the walls. Now, one of the key areas that I wanted to test for was looking into this way of creating this barred shadowing. This would then give an effective visual technique which could then be highlighted on the scientist's face and then onto objects in the lab as well. Once I tested this, I was really pleased with the results, as it looks like a car is going past and you have the shadowing projected onto the surfaces of the table and on the walls as well. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed looking into these key challenging areas for the production design for Scrutiny.